I slept with another man, while my boyfriend was crying in our bedroom about his weight, and everybody thinks that makes me a monster who left him when he was vulnerable. They don't realize I was already drowning in my own self-hatred, that his tears felt like accusations, that his body had become a mirror showing me everything I despised about myself. The real truth, the part that would make you understand why I justified it at the time, involves a vacation, a surgical consult, and a secret Instagram account I kept for 3 years. I'm going to explain exactly how my life became a cautionary tale, but you should know right now that the worst thing I did wasn't the cheating itself. It was what I did after he transformed his body that proves I was broken all along. 2 years ago, Mark weighed 190 pounds of solid muscle, and I was his petite girlfriend who could still shop in the juniors section. We met at a CrossFit gym where I taught morning classes and he worked as a physical therapist. People called us the fit couple and posted pictures of our meal prep containers on social media. I loved that version of us, the one where our bodies told a story of discipline and shared values. When his father died suddenly, Mark stopped working out. He started therapy sessions for his grief, but also comfortate through 3 seasons of The Office every night. Within 14 months, he'd added 80 pounds. His shoulders stopped filling out his t-shirts the way they used to. His jawline disappeared. He stopped wanting sex because he said he couldn't stand seeing himself naked. I told everyone I was being supportive. I cooked healthy meals he wouldn't eat. I bought him gym memberships he didn't use. What I couldn't admit was that his weight gain made me confront my own terror of becoming invisible. My mother had been slender until she hit 40, then ballooned during her divorce, and men started calling her ma'am with pity in their voices. I watched Mark's transformation and saw my future, and I hated him for it. I hated that his depression made him weak. I hated that his weakness made me feel shallow. Most of all, I hated that I started noticing other men again. I downloaded Bumble on a Tuesday, telling myself I just wanted validation that I was still attractive. I wasn't planning to meet anyone. I just needed to swipe and feel something other than resentment when Mark reached for another bowl of ice cream at midnight. The man I matched with, Ryan, was a surgeon who specialized in skin removal after massive weight loss. Ironic, right? He understood body transformation in ways Mark never would. Our first conversation lasted 4 hours, and when Mark asked who I was texting, I lied and said it was my sister having a crisis. I told myself Ryan was just a friend. Friends exchange pictures of their dogs and complain about their partners. Friends don't think about what it would feel like to be touched by someone whose body feels like discipline instead of surrender. By week 3, Ryan knew about Mark's weight, about his father's death, about our dead bedroom. I presented myself as a martyr sacrificing her own needs for a grieving man, and Ryan ate up every word. He called me too good for this situation, and I believed him. Our first coffee date happened during Mark's therapy appointment. I told Mark I was going to get my nails done. Ryan and I met at a cafe 3 towns over, where nobody would recognize us. He showed me before and after photos of his patients, people who'd lost hundreds of pounds, and had the excess skin carved away. Transformation is possible, he said, watching my face instead of his phone, for anyone committed enough. I heard the subtext. Mark wasn't committed. Mark was letting himself dissolve. We started meeting weekly. Ryan would touch my hand across the table, asking if Mark appreciated what he had. I'd shake my head, tears welling up, and Ryan would wipe them away with fingers that performed miracles. I never kissed him, not at first. The line between emotional affair and physical one felt blurry when my own boyfriend hadn't looked at me with desire in 8 months. I told myself I deserved connection. I told myself Mark's grief didn't give him permission to abandon our partnership. When Ryan sent me a picture of himself in scrubs, his muscles visible through the thin fabric, I sent back a photo of me in my workout clothes. Mark never asked why I was suddenly taking gym selfies again. He was too busy mourning his father and his former body to notice I was building an escape hatch. The first time we kissed was in Ryan's car after I'd told him about Mark eating an entire pizza in one sitting. You shouldn't have to watch someone destroy themselves, Ryan whispered, his breath minty against my lips. I pulled back briefly, but only briefly. Mark had been my person for 4 years, but Ryan was the first person who'd seen me in months. Really seen me. Not as a support system for grief, but as a woman with a body that still worked. Mark started asking questions. Why are you always on your phone? Who's this Ryan guy from work you mentioned? I doubled down on the lies. Ryan became Sarah from spin class. His text became my sister's group chat. I created a fake contact in my phone, complete with Sarah's picture. The more Mark's suspicion grew, the more elaborate my deceptions became. He'd cry about his weight and I'd hold him, feeling his softness against my bones, and I'd think about Ryan's hard edges. I'd tell Mark I loved him and the words felt like stones in my throat. My sister Jenna cornered me at our mother's birthday dinner. "You're glowing," she said, "but not in a good way. You're lit up with something you're hiding." I laughed it off, but she'd already noticed I'd stopped posting couple photos. She'd checked my Instagram following list. Jenna knew about Ryan before I realized she'd been watching. 2 weeks later, Mark found a receipt for a hotel bar in my purse. I'd met Ryan there after a conference, just for one drink, I told myself. Mark held the crumpled paper like evidence of a crime. "Were you with someone?" he asked, his voice small. I saw his vulnerability, the way his extra weight made him look younger, softer, more exposed. I could have told him everything then. Instead I said, "I met a client there for work. I'm networking for a new job." He believed me because he needed to. I realized in that moment that his trust was another thing I'd been starving, and I was too far gone to feed it. The first time I slept with Ryan was during Mark's work retreat. He was 3 hours away, team building with other therapists, learning to help people process their trauma. I was in Ryan's downtown loft, learning what it felt like to be wanted by a man whose body felt like a weapon instead of a wound. Ryan's hands knew exactly where to touch. His mouth knew exactly how much pressure to apply. He didn't ask about my day or my feelings. He consumed me, and I let him because consumption felt better than the slow starvation of my relationship. I told myself it was a one-time mistake born of loneliness. But when Mark returned, heavier somehow despite the retreat's healthy meals, I felt contempt instead of guilt. He showed me pictures of his colleagues doing trust falls, and I saw the way his shirt pulled across his stomach. He'd given up and I'd found something worth holding onto. The truth bomb dropped 3 weeks later. Ryan called me after midnight, his voice slurred with whiskey. "My wife found your texts," he said. "She's threatening to tell your boyfriend if I don't end this." I sat in my car outside Mark's apartment, the engine running, my entire world narrowing to the sound of my own heartbeat. Ryan had never mentioned a wife. I'd never thought to ask. I'd been so consumed with my own narrative of neglect that I hadn't considered I might be the other woman in someone else's story. I ended things with Ryan immediately, but the damage was already done. His wife had screenshots. She had dates. And she had something worse. She'd been following my public Instagram, watching me play the supportive girlfriend while her husband played my savior. She knew I'd been cheating for 3 months. What she didn't know was that I'd already slept with Ryan 3 weeks before Mark's father died. I'd already betrayed him before he had a reason to grieve. Mark started therapy specifically for body image issues. He'd come home talking about self-compassion, and I would nod, all while knowing I'd already checked out of our relationship, physically months before his weight became an iceberg between us. His therapist likely told him his partner should support his journey. His partner had already mapped an escape route. Ryan's wife made good on her threat. She sent Mark a Facebook message, not a long one, just "Your girlfriend has been sleeping with my husband. Here are the dates, here are the pictures she sent." She included a photo I'd taken in Ryan's bathroom mirror, my body flushed post-sex, my face turned away but my tattoo visible. Mark knew that tattoo. He confronted me while I was making dinner, his phone shaking in his hand. "Is this you?" He asked, and I saw the moment his trust died. The pain in his eyes wasn't just betrayal. It was the dawning realization that the person he'd been leaning on was the source of his deepest wound. I became defensive immediately. "You have no idea what I've been going through," I snapped. "You think it's easy watching you give up on yourself." Mark didn't cry. He just stared at me, his face composed in a way I'd never seen before. "I've been depressed," he said quietly. "What's your excuse?" He left the apartment that night, and I assumed he'd stay with his mother. I didn't know then that he'd booked a hotel room and hired a personal trainer. I didn't know that my betrayal wouldn't break him. It would rebuild him into someone I wouldn't recognize. 2 days after Mark left, I woke up with morning sickness. I'd been ignoring the signs, fatigue, nausea, tender breasts, because my periods had always been irregular. But the test I took at the CVS bathroom didn't care about my timelines. It showed 2 lines while I sat on a toilet seat that felt like a throne of thorns. The dates lined up perfectly with Ryan, not Mark. Mark and I hadn't been intimate in months. But Ryan and I had been careless exactly once. In a moment of passion, I thought I could compartmentalize. I made my worst decision before I even processed what the test meant. I called Mark. I told him I was pregnant. I didn't mention Ryan. I let him believe the baby was his, knowing it might be the only thread keeping him from filing for separation immediately. He was silent for a full minute. When he spoke, his voice was different, harder, colder. I'll be there for the child, he said, but I need a paternity test. Something in his tone told me he already suspected, but he came back to the apartment that night, and I felt a twisted victory. I'd won him back, even if it was based on a lie more corrupt than any affair. The consequences began multiplying like cancer cells. Mark moved back in but slept in the guest room. He started a ketogenic diet and began jogging at 5 a.m. I'd hear his alarm and think about Ryan, whose wife had now blocked me on every platform. She'd gotten what she wanted, her husband back, my relationship in tatters. Mark's transformation wasn't for me. It was his declaration of independence from the woman who'd betrayed him when he was weakest. I tried to fix things. I suggested couples therapy. I cooked meals that fit his new macros. I showed up to his first 5K and cheered from the sidelines, feeling like a sponsor instead of a partner. Mark ran that race with a determination I recognized from our early days, but his eyes never found mine in the crowd. He was running toward a future where I didn't exist. The social dimension exploded when I posted a picture of Mark's progress on my Instagram. So proud of my man. I captioned it, thinking I could rewrite our narrative publicly. His sister commented immediately, funny how you're proud now that he's getting healthy. Where were you when he was crying in the bathroom? She knew. Everyone knew. The comments section became a battleground between people congratulating Mark and others calling me out for hypocrisy. I deleted the post, but screenshots lived forever. 3 weeks later, I got the paternity test results. The lab tech wouldn't give me details over the phone, just said, "You need to come in for consultation." I hung up thinking this was standard procedure, that I'd finally have proof the baby was Mark's and we could move forward. When I sat in that sterile office and she slid the paper across the desk, the 0 probability next to Mark's name felt like a diagnosis of my own moral failure. Ryan wasn't listed as a match either, which meant I'd been so careless I couldn't even identify my child's father with certainty. I told Mark the results were inconclusive due to a lab error and we'd need to retest after the birth. He nodded, accepting this, and posted a picture of himself at the gym that night with the caption, "Focus on what you can control." It got 200 likes. Our private disaster had become his public inspiration story. He was transforming into the man I'd wanted, but it wasn't for me. It was his revenge, and it was working. I started drinking. Just wine at first, then vodka in water bottles. Mark would come home shredded, and I'd be 3 glasses deep, my belly stretching the fabric of my maternity clothes. He'd make protein shakes, and I'd mix mine with alcohol. I didn't see what everyone else could see, that I was destroying myself while he was rebuilding. My sister staged an intervention. I told her to fuck off and mind her business. She stopped calling. Another relationship severed. The baby came early. Mark was in the delivery room, holding my hand, his face a mask of determination that reminded me of his marathon training. When they placed the baby on my chest, I looked for Mark's features and found none. The baby had Ryan's dark hair, Ryan's olive skin tone, Ryan's dimple in the chin. Mark saw it too. I watched him catalog the differences, his face betraying nothing. He signed the birth certificate anyway. He took paternity leave from work. He posted pictures of himself holding this child who looked nothing like him, and people called him a hero. I was the villain in a story he was rewriting as a redemption arc, and I let him because I had no other moves. The unraveling happened in stages, each one stripping away another piece of the person I thought I was. First, Mark's mother flew in from Florida. She took one look at the baby and then at me, her eyes narrowing. "That child isn't Mark's," she said, not a question but a statement. Mark told her to drop it, but she didn't. She hired a private investigator. Within 2 weeks, she had photos of me from my first trimester, entering Ryan's building. She had timestamps. She had proof I'd been sleeping with Ryan while Mark was still living with me, while I was claiming to be supportive. Mark confronted me not with anger but with a calm that terrified me. He pulled out a folder of evidence his mother had compiled. "I need you to tell me the truth," he said, "not because I want to hurt you, but because this child deserves to know his real father." I looked at the photos, me in Ryan's lobby, me kissing Ryan goodbye, me with a coffee cup from his favorite shop, and I realized I'd been documenting my own destruction. I told Mark everything. The affair. The timeline. The paternity test I'd hidden. When I finished, he stood up, walked to the nursery, and packed a bag for the baby. "You can't take him," I said, blocking the door. "I'm his mother." Mark looked at me with pity so profound it felt like a physical blow. "I'm not taking him from you," he said. I'm taking him to get a proper paternity test, and then I'm filing for full custody based on your instability. He had documentation of my drinking, my lies, my affair. While I'd been drowning, he'd been building a case. My support system had been evaporating while I wasn't paying attention. My mother had been talking to Mark's mother. My sister had been sending him updates on my drinking. Even my best friend had been providing character statements about my pattern of deceit. The paternity test confirmed what we all knew. The baby was Ryan's. Mark filed for custody the same day, citing my moral turpitude and unfit parenting. What nobody knew yet, not Mark, not Ryan's wife, not even my own lawyer, was that I'd been planning to give the baby up for adoption. I had paperwork from an agency, filled out except for the final signature. I'd been too cowardly to raise a child alone and too ashamed to admit I never wanted to be a mother in the first place. Mark's lawyer deposed Ryan. Ryan's wife showed up with her own attorney. Suddenly, I was the center of a legal tornado, and my defense was that I'd been overwhelmed and acting out of character. I told the mediator that Mark's weight gain had triggered my abandonment issues, that his depression had made me seek connection elsewhere. I watched the court reporter's face as she typed my justifications, her expression neutral but her eyes judgmental. Even she could see I was throwing excuses at the wall and praying something stuck. I hired a fancy lawyer who told me I had a good chance of keeping custody if I could prove I'd been a stable partner before Mark's weight gain. I walked into that deposition feeling confident, armed with photos of our early relationship, testimonials from our couple friends. Then Mark's lawyer played video footage from our apartment security camera, footage I'd forgotten existed, showing me sneaking out at midnight, returning at 2 a.m., the night after Mark's father died. The confidence drained from my body like a toxin. I had been cheating while he was grieving. There was no redemption arc for that. I started therapy because the court ordered it, but I stayed because my therapist was the first person who didn't let me off the hook. You keep saying Mark's weight gain pushed you away, she said, but you were cheating before he gained the first pound. The weight was just the excuse you needed. She had me read my old journal entries from before his father's death. I'd written about feeling trapped, about wondering if he was the one, about flirting with a trainer at our gym. The pattern had been there all along. The weight hadn't broken us. It had revealed what was already cracked. I almost came clean on Mark's new fiancee's Instagram post. She'd announced their engagement with a photo of them at the marathon finish line, his arm around her tiny waist. I typed, he deserved someone who loved him at his heaviest, not just his lightest. I failed him. I hovered over the post button, ready to claim my villainy publicly, but I deleted it, because the truth is I don't know if I ever loved Mark at all. I loved the image we created. I loved being half of the fit couple. When that image dissolved, so did my commitment. The weight was never the problem. The problem was that I was in love with a hologram, and when the projection flickered, I went looking for a sharper image. The promised worst revelation came during a custody hearing 6 months later. Mark's lawyer had me on the stand, asking about my relationship timeline. I was prepared to admit to the affair, the paternity lie, the drinking. I'd practiced my remorse face in the mirror. What I wasn't prepared for was when Ryan's ex-wife took the stand and testified that I'd contacted her 2 months prior, offering to pay her to lie, and say Ryan had also slept with other women, to muddy the waters and make my affair seem less significant in court. I had done this. I'd written the emails. I'd offered her $10,000 from my savings. Mark's lawyer projected the emails on a screen. There I was, in writing, proving that my remorse was just another manipulation. But the real revelation wasn't that I'd tried to bribe Ryan's ex-wife. It was that I'd sent those emails from an account I'd created specifically to document my affair, a kind of digital diary I'd used to convince myself the relationship was justified. I'd kept receipts of every text, every hotel, every lie, thinking I could control the narrative. Instead, I'd created a roadmap of my own destruction, and Mark now had it all. The judge terminated my parental rights entirely, citing patterned malicious behavior. Mark was granted full custody, but since the baby wasn't his, Ryan was ordered to pay child support and was given visitation. Mark walked out of that courtroom and posted a picture of himself holding the baby at the park. The caption read, "Being a father isn't about DNA, it's about showing up." It went viral. He got interview requests. He became the face of modern fatherhood. I became the villain in his redemption story, and he never had to say my name. The world figured it out anyway. What broke me completely was learning, through a mutual friend's accidental slip, that Mark had known about Ryan's wife from the beginning. He'd found her message the same day she sent it. He'd known I was cheating before I told him I was pregnant. He'd stayed silent, documenting everything, building his case, transforming his body, and becoming the hero of a story I didn't know I was writing. While I was drowning, he'd been directing the entire production. I wasn't just the villain. I was the unwitting co-star in his comeback. The final hidden element revealed itself when Mark's lawyer filed a defamation suit against me for the emails I'd sent to Ryan's ex-wife. I was ordered to pay Mark's legal fees, nearly $40,000. My savings evaporated. My salary was garnished. I had to declare bankruptcy at 31. Mark, meanwhile, had used the viral fame to launch a fitness coaching business for single fathers. He was making six figures. He was dating a woman from his running club who posted pictures of them doing kettlebell swings together. She had my old body, the one I'd traded for a life of secrets. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I was too broke to afford therapy to process it. I moved back in with my mother. She charged me rent I couldn't afford and made me sleep in my childhood bedroom. Every morning she'd slide articles under my door about Mark's latest business venture, his features in Men's Health, his speaking engagements about overcoming betrayal. She wasn't being cruel. She was trying to make me understand the depth of what I'd thrown away. But I couldn't look at those articles without feeling the phantom weight of the baby I'd birthed but never mothered, the man I'd loved but never truly seen, the life I'd built and dynamited because I was too weak to communicate my needs. The concrete fallout came in waves. First, the financial ruin. Then the social annihilation. Mark's sister created a private Instagram account documenting my downfall, pictures of me looking haggard at the grocery store, screenshots of my failed attempts to contact Mark, my drunken Facebook rants. She only had a few hundred followers, but they were all our mutual friends. I was the entertainment. I was the cautionary tale in human form. My best friend from college got married and didn't invite me. I found out through photos posted online. She'd been one of my bridesmaids in the imaginary wedding I'd planned with Mark. In the pictures, Mark's new girlfriend was there, wearing a dress I would have chosen for myself. I drank an entire bottle of wine and wrote a long, rambling email to the bride about loyalty. She never responded. Work became impossible. I was a marketing coordinator for a wellness brand, and my entire job was curating inspirational stories. When my boss found out I was the betrayed girlfriend from Mark's viral post someone had tagged me in the comments, she called me into her office. "Your personal life is complicating our brand values," she said. I was given a severance package that barely covered 1 month's expenses. I used it to pay my mother rent. Mark reached out unexpectedly, not to me but through his lawyer. He wanted to establish a trust fund for the baby's college education, and he wanted to name me as a beneficiary. "He doesn't hate you," the lawyer said. "He just wants to move on." The gesture was so generous it felt like a blade. He wasn't just winning at life. He was winning at being a better person than I could ever be, and he was doing it while co-parenting a child that wasn't his. The dread I'd felt about his success was replaced by something worse, the realization that his goodness made my flaws glow radioactive. I started therapy because the court ordered it, but I stayed because my therapist was the first person who didn't let me off the hook. "You keep saying Mark's weight gain pushed you away," she said, "but you were cheating before he gained the first pound. The weight was just the excuse you needed." She had me read my old journal entries from before his father's death. I'd written about feeling trapped, about wondering if he was the one, about flirting with a trainer at our gym. The pattern had been there all along. The weight hadn't broken us. It had revealed what was already cracked. My current state is this: I wake up in my childhood bedroom, 32 years old, unemployed, with supervised visitation of a child who calls Mark Dada and me, the lady. I still check Mark's social media every morning, his transformation now complete, 220 pounds of lean muscle, a thriving business, a beautiful fiancée, a child he loves despite biology. The comments on his posts call him an inspiration. The comments about me when I foolishly read them call me a monster. Both are true. He is inspirational. I am monstrous. But monsters are made, not born, and I'm only now understanding the architecture of my own cruelty. I'm telling this story now because yesterday, Mark's fiancée posted a picture of her ultrasound. She's pregnant. The baby is his. The child will have his eyes, his chin, his genetic legacy. And I am sitting here, still paying for the lie I told about a baby that wasn't his, still explaining to court-appointed supervisors why I thought deception was a valid life strategy, still watching the man I betrayed live the life I thought I wanted but was too broken to build. This ties back to that opening confession perfectly. You thought I was just a shallow woman who cheated on a fat guy and regretted it when he got hot. But the truth is more damning. I was always shallow. I was always looking for an exit. His weight gain gave me permission to be the person I'd always been capable of being, a person who uses other people's vulnerabilities as mirrors for her own failures. The fact that he's hot now is incidental. The fact that I'm alone is inevitable. What I've learned, if you can call it that, is that the body is the easiest thing to change. Mark transformed his in 18 months. What's harder is excavating the rot in your own character, the need for validation, the inability to sit with discomfort, the reflex to externalize your own self-hatred onto the person who loves you. I've been in therapy for a year, and I still catch myself wanting to post gym selfies and tag Mark, as if his attention might still be mine to claim. So here I am, the author of my own downfall, telling you that the worst part isn't that I cheated. It's that given the same circumstances, I'm not sure I wouldn't do it again. That's the revelation that keeps me up at night. Not Mark's abs or his new family, but the terrifying truth that self-awareness doesn't always lead to self-improvement. Sometimes it just proves you're self-aware enough to recognize your own patterns and too weak to break them. Judge me if you want. God knows I do. But the next time you see a transformation story and think, what a loser his ex must be, remember that you don't know what was already broken before the weight came on. You don't know what ghosts haunted that relationship. And you don't know that the person telling the story might be leaving out the part where they tried to bribe someone, lied about paternity, and still checks their ex's Instagram 10 times a day. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just finally telling the whole truth, and the truth is this: I didn't leave Mark because he got fat. I left because I was never capable of staying. The weight just gave me somewhere to point.